Vibe coding's been a pretty crazy trend. I feel like I'm seeing it everywhere, from books to shit posts to just the entirety of my Twitter feed. It must have taken over the web, right? Like these companies are making so much money, which is why, Lovable's user count have dropped by 50% almost in the last couple months. That's a bit scary. Oh boy, we have a lot to dive into here, don't we? Maybe vibe coding was just a trend after all. Maybe vibe coding is a bad term. Maybe Lovable is a bad business. We have a lot to dive into here. Before we do that, though, I do want to do some quick disclaimers. I'm an investor in two of the companies here, Lovable and Bolt. I have no financial ties to Replit, V0, or Emergent, even though you guys seem to think I'm a huge for sale simp. I do think V0 is the most usable of these products right now, but they all have their strengths and weaknesses. We're not here to talk about any of those things. We're here to talk about the entire market of vibe coding and how valuable and viable all of these products are as a marketplace. And I'm about to shit on two of my investments a whole bunch, so this is going to be an expensive video. As I said before, I am invested in two of these companies, but zero of them pay me at the moment. Someone's got to. Quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll dive in. Gonna be real with you guys, it's never been easier to set auth up yourself. With all these incredible open source solutions that can adapt to any database and any application structure, it's incredible what you can do, which is why it's crazy how much I regret doing it myself. For the last 7 months, we have been losing business opportunities, dealing with a ton of users that are upset that we only support Google for auth, and having tons of random issues integrating various stuff because we chose to roll our own auth. And as cool as it was for demos, I've been regretting it every single day. And that's why we're moving to WorkOS and why you probably should too. If you want big companies like Microsoft and Amazon to adopt your product, you need the right tools in place for them. When I think about how much money we've lost not being able to do those types of enterprise deals, it makes me literally sick. I've had so many companies hit me up and our answer has been soon TM because we don't have something like the admin portal. God, I'm so excited to have this set up because as soon as we do it, I can just send a link to a customer, they pick whatever auth provider they're using, and now they're set up and ready to go for their business. This is effectively necessary if you want to set these things up with these big companies and their IT teams. And the alternative is endless back and forth with the companies that is utter hell. If you're not using WorkOS, you're setting up a team to do this instead, or you're just blowing a bunch of deals. Basically, every modern dev tool is already using them, from OpenAI and Vercel to Cursor to Snowflake to Bolt and more. And if you want to figure out why we all love WorkOS, check them out now at soydev.link/WorkOS. Before we go too deep on this, I want to give credit where it's due to the source, which is Chris Prosarki, who works at Crust Data, which is a recent YC company. They do a lot of calculating data based on web traffic patterns, whatnot. It's hard for them to know for sure how much traffic a service is getting when they don't own the service. So these numbers are all speculative, some amount. Sorry for the interruption. Future Theo here. Turns out this chart, the one that I base a lot of this video off, is accurate in some ways, but does not necessarily reflect where Lovable is at as a business. We'll talk about this more in a bit, so don't read too much into this. Back to the video for now. So to be very locked in on what we're talking about here, the idea of vibe code as they are describing it, and as we are talking about in this context, isn't just hitting tab or using traditional tools like Cursor to help you write code as a developer. What we're talking about are web applications for building applications that are meant to be used by non-developers, people who not only won't read the code, but can't because they don't know how, they don't have the experience. People like our parents, people like our friends and family that are outside of tech, putting together one-off applications to solve whatever random problems they might have. So to be very, very clear, we are talking about web apps or building small apps as a person who is not a dev and cannot really read code. There's a lot of different definitions about vibe coding. I have a whole video where I complain about this. We're not talking about the different definitions. If you are upset that this is how we're defining it today, you can go watch another video, but we're going to do our best to go in detail on the vibe coding app building trend because it's a very interesting one. Let's start with this post and then we'll go deeper from there. Is Lovable dying? Web traffic's declined almost 50% from 35.5 million users in June to a bit under 20 million in September. This trend can be seen across other big vibe coding tools like Replit and Bolt. Here's why I think this is happening. Point 1, the viral wave has passed. Spring and summer hype, especially with Lovable's June peak, pulled in lots of non-devs on monthly passes. They experimented with the tool and never returned. The cultural conversation has also shifted from AI can build an entire app back to a more realistic view of AI's limitations. I do not agree with that part, but we'll talk about that later. Not as in I think that this one or the other side here is correct. I don't think that the cultural conversation has actually shifted. I think a lot of people are still claiming AI can do everything. Don't agree with the commentary on the culture here. Point 2, power users eating up compute. A small group of power users burn through compute budgets. To protect margins, platforms have had to throttle usage and raise prices. This scared away hobbyists and experimenters, reducing the casual exploration that inflated spring traffic. Also don't agree with that. There are parts here that are right, but the framing is wrong. Point 3, Lovable needs to monetize. After raising $200 million, Lovable raced to monetize, tightening free credit limits and ending the generous 50% off discounts. This friction dulled its appeal for casual builders. Probably, but not as much as they seem to imply. And point 4, in May, V0 lost $500K, which is 10% of their web traffic, after moving from $20 a month to usage-based credits. Casual users found their balance disappearing in hours, which led to outrage. Point 5, Replic's missteps. They once thrived on their free tier and always-on REPLs, but over the years, the free education plans have been discontinued, always-on has been removed from basic plans, etc. A high-profile AI agent failure occurred in July, which was when they accidentally deleted a database, and user trust took a hit. Okay, I figured out what's wrong with this post. This post is really tech Twitter brained, which is funny because it's on LinkedIn. But it seems like this post is making a lot of decisions and a lot of assumptions based on what they see people talking about in their circle on Twitter, which is not what any of this is about. This is about people like our parents, not people like our coworkers. And here we get to the one point I really agree with that I'm going to be focusing on. AI coding is losing its novelty. AI code is being absorbed into mainstream tools. Okay, I agree with the first sentence here and not the rest. GitHub, Copilot, Cursor, etc. are all integrating into our IDEs instead of being used via web-first vibe coding sites. Oh God, they're referencing Firebase Studio. Oh boy. Okay. So that's the original post. I respect them for their data and agree with some of the concepts of the points they're touching on, but the majority of these points are way too Twitter-brained and not very reality. So we're going to reframe all of this. There are 2 reasons that people try things. Reason 1, they solve a problem for the person. Seems pretty obvious. If you have a problem and someone gives you a solution, you're going to try the solution. But then there's reason 2. This is the less intuitive one. Novelty. I didn't get this for a long ass time, but this has become a huge part of my life as a content creator. People seem to think that if you have a video that performs surprisingly well as a YouTuber, Instagram, whatever you're on, that what you should do next is the same topic again. It makes a lot of sense. If I mostly talk about, I don't know, React, and I do one video about Svelte instead, and that Svelte video does really well, obviously I should talk about Svelte more. And yes, I probably should talk about it more, but with enough space between instances. Because a huge part of why a Svelte video would perform well on my channel isn't because Svelte itself is so interesting, it's the novelty. The novelty of a new Svelte video, which there are fewer of, the novelty of a Svelte video on my channel, which is unique in and of itself. Novelty is a huge selling point for things. People like to try things, especially things that make them feel smarter, better, more capable, more potentially successful, more interesting. People like to do novel things. Different people like different amounts of novelty in their life, but everyone likes to do a thing they couldn't do before or learn about a thing they might not have learned about before. It makes you feel better. So another way to frame this is reason 1 is this thing will make you better and help you solve real problems. Reason 2 is things that make you feel better and feel more capable. So why are we talking about this? Let's think about where the tools we use every day fit here. I would argue that a tool like React, the framework, fits up here. Not many people pick React because it's super exciting and fun, especially right now. Initially, a lot of people picked React for the novelty and the uniqueness and the potential, but they were mostly picking React, especially nowadays, because it's solving a problem and it's the default solution. What about Svelte or Solid? I would make the argument that those right now largely fall under novelty, at least for the reason that you're first trying it. You might have frustrations with React. You might just be tired of React. You might just be looking for something different. And you go look at these other solutions because you're looking for something different. This is why even though in my replies on a platform like Twitter, I see like 20 to 30% more replies about React than about Solid and Svelte. But if we go look at the NPM install charts, it's like a 20 to 30x gap. Probably more than that, honestly. Because the novelty makes it more fun to talk about the thing, to engage with the thing, to play with the thing, but not to make it part of your day-to-day workflow. To go back to this post, This is why I really disagree with the rest of this section. AI coding is being absorbed into mainstream tools is not a comment on novelty. These are different products with different spaces and different goals. No one is trying to make the decision between GitHub Copilot, Cursor, and other things like Lovable and V0. I've never in my life sat down and thought, should I be using Lovable or Cursor for this? No one is. That's not how reality works. Cursor is for people who want to edit code. Lovable is for people who don't really understand what code is yet. I don't know very many, if any, devs that actively use Lovable, which is fine. It's not really for them. It's kind of crazy they have a GitHub integration, all those other layers, but they aren't really focused on devs. There is an angle of helping beginners get more into dev that is exciting, but that's not the role of these tools, at least not fully. That is kind of what Replit used to be. Replit I used to call the easiest product to graduate from, because you use Replit when you're learning how to code, and then a week in, you know enough code to realize how broken the platform is and then move somewhere else. But now they are yet another competitor in this super saturated vibe coding space. Future Theo interruption again. I should have been more sus of this chart considering my susness of some of the bullet points. That said, there are other numbers that line up with it, like the Google Trends interest over time has pretty similar alignment, but it seems less like a decline in traffic and more like there was a weird surge in like late June, July timelines. As an investor, I do get investor updates, and I have enough in there to know that their revenue is consistently growing. Anton even responded to my post pointing out that their internal charts for tracking the number of paying customers is not only growing, but you actually see a pretty meaningful inflection point here where it bends upwards around the same time that dip happened. My honest guess is that they were buying a lot of ads and doing some crazy campaign. I know this is around the time that we started talking about maybe doing ads. And that campaign got a lot of low value eyes on the platform, which resulted in a surge where when strategically cropped so that you're tracking that bump and not too much else, looks a lot worse. This is a general web traffic chart, and I don't know how Crust Data gets their data. It's hard to know for sure how reliable that is. One potentially useful source that popped up in my replies is from Bobby here, where he points out that every Lovable project uses this particular package, the Vite plugin component tagger, for Lovable. And this package is still being downloaded about 1.5 million times a week, but it peaked at around 4.5 million times a week. So there's definitely something here. It could also be that the way that they're doing things, it's not installing the package as much. It's hard to know for sure. The thing I can say most comfortably is that the amount of new people showing up on the Lovable website right now is lower than it was 3 months ago. Does that mean the business is dying? Does that mean I'm not going to make money on my investment? Does that mean this whole video is not worth watching? Hard to know with any of this for sure. All I know is that some numbers are down, revenue is still growing, and at the same time, it feels like we're seeing less and less of this stuff. So why am I even putting up this video? Because I think the rest of it's very useful. If you're down, I would recommend you continue watching, because the way I think about this and the way I describe how I think about this industry and why I think it has limited potential is a good explanation. At least that's what my team told me. So yeah. I did accidentally start a bit of a drama on Twitter with this though, because a Lovable employee said Lovable for X is the new Uber for X. I said that the difference is Uber was growing consistently. Bit of a snide remark. I regret being so snide with this, especially because like I'm an investor, I'm a friend of theirs. That said, they were awesome with it. At no point did I feel like they were coming at me or like legitimately angry with me. I even offered to delete it and they said, no worries. They even DM'd me saying like, keep doing this. It's really helpful for people to see what we're up to. As I said, their traffic is really good. Anton made a post that was solid. Henrik here quote tweeted us with the Lovable is dying in quotes. Yeah, I think this was solid overall. I retweeted them. We're on good terms. I have no bad blood with Lovable. I just want to talk about the state of this industry. So without further ado, back to past Theo. So I think the reason that the dip is happening is quite simple. The novelty wore off. The idea that a person who has heard about code before, maybe they have one friend who writes code a little bit and they know that friend makes a lot of money and they think it's cool. Like everyone has an app idea. I went to a concert yesterday and one of my friends in the music scene was really excited to tell me about his app idea and how much he wants to build it. That is what these platforms are selling to. They are selling this idea that anyone can be a developer. I'm going to do a real weird comparison here. Remember GoPro? Suddenly, everyone has an action camera. They can film anything. You can add it to your helmet when you're skiing. You can add it to the front of your bike. You can use your GoPro to film anything. What GoPro brought to the world was a nearly infinite amount of footage that no one will ever watch. If we talk about a camera like the one I'm using here, my Lumix S5 2X, that costs $2,000 and my lens costs another $1,000, my guess is that the average video filmed on one of these cameras is seen by at least a few hundred people. The average video filmed on a GoPro is seen by 0 people, because the people who are using the GoPro aren't even looking at the footage themselves. It's the novelty of knowing they have it that's exciting to them, and the potential that they could take the footage from their GoPro and make something of it, and then they never do. GoPro is selling an aspiration, not a product. They are selling the promise to you as a person who's interested in sports that you could film it and share it and edit it and people will love it. And then no one does. No one does. I would guess in a similar sense that the average code that was written pre-AI was probably used a couple hundred times. Some code is used millions of times a second. Some code is used once every couple of weeks. But the majority of code being written is being deployed and is being used for something. So what does this have to do with GoPro? Where are they at now? They sell these aspirations. They're doing pretty well, right? Like they're a big company. About that. Back in 2015, when it seemed like they were all the rage, they peaked at $85 a share. They hit an all-time low in January of this year. Actually, no, it was February, where they were down to 70 cents per share. That's a 100x drop in valuation. It seemed like GoPro had an incredible business going for them because everybody had one, but then the novelty wore off. They sold a promise, the promise died, and what's left is penny stocks. And I am a little bit scared, again, as an investor in some of these companies, that we might be at a similar spot here. There is a happy potential ending with the GoPro stuff, which is that Insta360 found real ways to make useful products within that sphere of business. But even then, their market cap is lower than where GoPro peaked, and I don't know how much further they can go with it. GoPro is a dead fucking business, though. Like, they are fucked. So that's what I'm thinking here. I think that the majority customer of a product like Lovable or Replit, and even Bolt V0, and I'm not as familiar with Immersion, but hypothetically that too, my assumption is that the average person using one of these products is not a developer. There's only an estimated like 40-ish million developers in the world, if I recall, up to 47 million devs, depending on where you're getting your estimates from. There are not that many programmers. So if there's 47 million devs and Lovable peaked at 35 million users, these people aren't devs, obviously. Duh. These numbers are crazy relative to the size of the dev space because these numbers are not numbers of devs. These are numbers of people who want to be devs or want to get the dev part out of the way so they could hypothetically maybe do something useful. And then they realize that they can't or they run out of ideas. Everyone has an app idea. The novelty of getting to try building it is really exciting, which is why people would try it, subscribe, and then go and do it. And then they realize that building an app is a lot harder than just writing the code. And the code itself is not something you can just generate. There's a lot of steps to it that require a lot more thought and time and understanding, especially once you get into debugging. So these apps promising us to just solve the problems either get really expensive when you're doing hundreds of gens just to fix some dumb bug, or you have to go learn how to code yourself too. So if you have the first one, you're spending way too much money, you churn. And if you have the second one, you get good at coding, you move to Cursor and churn. The result here is that a lot of people are leaving, not because the price went up, but because they don't have the ability to do anything without spending more or learning to code. And we've seen this in all of the numbers, in a lot of the posting that people are commenting on. All of that clearly indicates that there's a graduation problem with these tools. If you do use them properly, they become really expensive or you leave. And if you don't use them properly, you're going to churn. That's the reality of businesses like GoPro, like Lovable, even like us with Ping back when we built Ping. Not familiar? We built a tool that's made to be Zoom for streamers, make it easier for content creators to do live collaborations. We put a lot of work into Ping. I'm really proud of what we built with it. We thought we built this tool for professional creators. We really tried to lock in on that. What we ended up with is a subscriber base that's primarily aspiring creators. People who wanted higher quality video because it would make them feel better about the streams that they were doing and make them feel more like the professionals they wanted to be. Aspiring creators and aspiring businesses in general are really bad. Don't sell to the aspiring version of a market. Sell to the market directly. This is a mistake I've seen so many make, and this is why businesses like Cursor, who I should have disclosed earlier I'm also invested in, are much more likely to survive these changes than companies like Lovable, because you'll graduate from Lovable. Lovable is not meant to be used by us. Lovable is meant to be used by our parents. And once our parents are over the novelty, the same way they're not going to buy a new GoPro because they stopped using their old one 4 years ago, they're not going to keep paying their subscription to Lovable because they don't have anything else to build. They tried building their one app idea. They didn't get very far. They got bored. They got priced out. They got nerd sniped by learning how to actually code. Whatever the reason is, they leave. And my concern here, and my concern for my investment, is that I honestly kind of feel like these AI app builder web apps are just the new version of a GoPro. It's an aspiring business, an aspiring thing, an exciting opportunity for people who don't know how to code to see a bit of what it's like. And for the most part, they're going to vanish. That said, there is a silver lining here. The GoPro wasn't my first camera, but it was the first camera I had that was actually useful. The GoPro gave me a reason to film more, to film my skateboard tricks with my friends, and then to pull it into actual editing software and try to turn it into something. There's a very good chance this YouTube channel would not exist if it wasn't for GoPro. This camera, this weird, small, mostly useless, wide-angle thing we spent too much money on that my dad bought because he wanted to attach it to his helmet when he skied, was the gateway for me to get more into video. And I know I'm not the only person who that's the case for. But it turns out that Lovable was worth billions of dollars because people like me invested, and they're now using those billions of dollars to subsidize compute costs and build a platform that allows people like me when I was 12 to play around with these cool code things for the first time. 99 out of 100 of those users are going to just vanish when they're bored, the same way their GoPros rot in a closet. But for that 1 out of 100, it might end up changing their lives. They might end up going down this incredible, chaotic pipeline that is software development in modern times, and they might even be hanging out in my chat right now. That's such an exciting thing. I am hyped for a future where more people can get that first, oh shit, it works moment earlier in their careers, earlier in their learning journeys, because it's a hell of a lot easier to see a result and feel good about it if you're playing around in Lovable or Bolt or Replit than it would be to feel that same win learning how to code from scratch in a random IDE when you don't even know how to pick which editor to code in. Is a huge lowering of the barrier for people who want to try writing code the first time. And even if 99% of them give up because it turns out it's hard, that 1% might get a lot further than they would have otherwise. So the same way I owe the GoPro my career, I think some of you guys are going to owe Lovable yours. And if it turns out they're spending billions of dollars to bring in a small number of people, cool. That's a real win. I like the idea of having more people who learn to code and write code and do awesome things. The same way that Flash enabled a whole new era of games and game developers, the same way Roblox is doing the same thing. I hope that tools like Lovable have a really positive long-term impact on the space, even if they die off in the process. It would also be nice if they don't die, because I would like to make my money back on those investments, but you get the idea. This is how I think about these things. This is how I think about these trends. And this is why I'm not particularly surprised that AI vibe coding web app building tools are not all the rage that they used to be. That's all I got, though. What do you think? Am I overhyping or underhyping? Do you think that there's no potential here at all? I'm curious. Let me know. And until next time, peace, nerds.